Hello Mixes, it's me Keegan here, and we're on a train ride. Yay! Okay. We're getting started. Why are we going backwards?
Get onto the right track.
Huh?
To get onto the right track.
Yeah.
Shoot over here.
Huh? But you're gonna make your own channel?
No, I can upload to yours. Told you.
the mine
You
shaft.
gotta get out and walk back.
Alrighty, I want everybody off my train. You're all kicking. No, I'm just kidding. Alrighty, welcome to the top of the mountain here. At this point, you're welcome to come on off the cars, or if you'd rather want to stay on the cars, you're more than welcome to as well. We give a history lesson up here at the top of this mountain, and it involves what we're looking at right here. This is what is known as bootleg coal mining. And also, I'll tell you a little bit about strip mining, which we have an example of right behind our train, that big pit that you see back there.
Stay here.
Alrighty, now before I start off here, I got a few important questions that need answered right now. How's everybody doing today?
Good?
Good? Enjoying your visit here so far?
Yep.
Alright, that's what I like to hear. Thank you very much for coming today and riding the steam train ride. Now my other important question is, how was the ride up here? Nice and smooth, right?
Nah.
Yes?
Nah.
These are the best compliments I've had all year. Alright. These are, in fact, old mine cars. We actually did pull these out of our mine down below years ago. So you're getting an authentic feeling here at Pioneer Tunnel, riding up here to the mountainside. We recycled them into our passenger cars here. So, again, you're getting that nice smooth ride that the coal buggies did back in the day. You won't see too much suspension on these old buggies, which makes for the ride being very smooth. Now, I'd like to welcome you folks here to the town of Ashland, Pennsylvania. It's a small town here that was founded in the early 1800s by a gentleman from Lexington, Kentucky, and his name was Henry Clay. He moved here to Pennsylvania State, specifically northeastern Pennsylvania here, our coal regions, to become a senator at the time. And his big claim to fame was actually pushing off our dependency on a lot of coal being brought overseas from the UK and Britain at the time. So this had a positive effect on our local coal mining industry. That's why you noticed our steam locomotive here is named D. Henry Clay in his honor. As well, a lot of miners saw to him as a big hero, so they decided to make a statue of him and put it up over that mountain in the town of Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Now, us locals here like to make this joke. That statue should be over here. He founded our town. Well, local superstition says that it was too heavy for them to bring over that mountain, so they just left it over there in Pottsville. That's no fun. Now, our town used to have about 10,000 people living in it, and that was around 1920, during the peak of the coal mining industry. Now, throughout the years, as coal mining has declined, since other fuel sources started coming in around 1920, a lot of people have moved out of the area here to find jobs elsewhere. So we're stuck with about 5,600 of those people down below, and I'm proud to say every single morning at 8 a.m., I wake them up with that whistle up there. And a lot of them like to wake me up then afterwards. Now what we're looking at right here, this is what is known as a bootleg coal mine. To get into the history of this, if we were all standing up here in 1920, looking out this beautiful mountain view here, you would have seen hundreds of coal mine sites all throughout. Each one of those coal mine sites back in the day were owned by the larger coal companies, such as the Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company or the Lehigh Valley Coal Company. Now, just one of these mine sites that these guys owned had about 150 miners working for them down below underneath the ground. Well, throughout the years, as the interesting chain of events started occurring, the Great Depression struck. And a lot of these larger coal companies could no longer afford to keep all these hundreds of mine sites open. So they started shutting a lot of these mines down. And this caused a big problem here in the anthracite coal region because coal mining was the big thing around here. And there weren't too many other jobs to be had around here at the time either. So when these miners were laid off, they no longer had a way of making a living for their families. So one of these ways these guys had to make a way of living was by coming up here to the mountainside and starting their own coal mines, something that they knew what to do real well. However, what they were getting ready to do, it was actually illegal, hence to why we call this bootleg coal mining. And the reason why this is illegal is because those larger coal companies back in the day owned the mineral rights to the different veins of coal that sit in these mountain valleys. So what they were doing is stealing the coal out from underneath this ground. And to give you a better example, this mountain that we're standing on right now, the Mahanoy Mountain, is still in fact owned by one of these large coal companies today. It's owned by the Reading Anthracite Company. So if I was to go moseying on back to that old strip mine back there, pick up a few lumps of coal and throw it in my firebox there, I'm a bootlegger too. And some days I have to get down to the bottom somehow, so. Now with these guys here, they didn't have a whole lot of money laying around, so they couldn't afford brand new, bear with me, tongue-tied tour guide, it's been a long day so far. Now these guys couldn't afford brand new supplies, so they were forced to go home to dig around for their own supplies to build their mines out of, such as an old scrap barrel they had laying in their backyard. a wire rope they had laying around, a reel they made themselves, and maybe they would come across an abandoned mine site, take some mine car rails and some mine car wheels, bring it up here and assemble their own mine sites. Now they ran into the other problem. Just one man couldn't mine all this coal themselves, so they were forced to go home because they couldn't afford to hire anybody to help them. They'd go home again, kick open the door, and wake up their brothers, their cousins, even their own children, and bring them up here to the mountainside, and they'd start digging down. Now these mines were real simple. They only went down about 50 feet. That way they could avoid a lot of the harmful gases you can find in these old underground coal veins, such as methane gas or black damp, which is a point of virtually no oxygen at all. Also, they tended not to use a whole lot of dynamite back in the day because they were only 50 feet down. If someone heard their booms and bangs up here, obviously Mr. Policeman Officer will be up here to visit them, and they didn't want that. Now how this mine right here would work, to give you a good example and reference, the head of the family, the father, he would ride down inside that buggy right there, and he would hand-pick their solid rock and coal all day long. Now once he got down to that coal, he would usually break it off into big lumps, big enough to where you could cradle it in your arms. He'd dump it into that buggy there, and once it was fully loaded, he'd either pick up a small rock on that mine floor or a smaller piece of coal and throw it all the way out here to the surface. Once that landed outside, that was the sign for whoever was at the top to start cranking that buggy up. And that was usually a job for the children back in the day. They had the most energy at the time. Once all that coal got up to the top, they'd dump it onto the ground, break it into smaller pieces, put it in the bags or baskets, and then walk it off the side of the mountain to their homes. From there, they would sell it to their neighbors or sell it at a flea market. Anywhere they could sell this coal to make a living for their family. Now, this is fine and dandy and all, but it is illegal, and these larger coal companies all caught on to this. So what they decided to do then was to create their own private police force. And these guys, they were really tough. You didn't want to get caught up here on the mountainside back in the day, especially if you had a pick in one hand and a bucket in the other. And their jobs were just to scour these mountains all day long, looking for these illegal mining outfits. When they came across one, much to like what we have an example of here, they'd pull you up from under the ground, dump their coal back into the ground, light a stick of dynamite, blast your mine to pieces, and then they would take you into jail. And if you didn't want to go to jail, they always carried a bunch of pistols and shotguns and everything to make sure you went to jail. Now, this started causing another issue because there's hundreds of these gentlemen up here on the mountainside. They're all trying to make a living for their families. Again, there's not too many other jobs here back in the day. These guys couldn't even go over to a lot of the local railroaders. These guys couldn't even go over to a lot of the local railroads. The reason being, a lot of the local railroads were even started by these larger coal companies. To give you a good example, the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad and the Lehigh Valley Railroad. Now these miners, once they're all being caught, they're being taken into these small local jail cells. And this causes the problem because they start overpopulating these jail cells. So they had no choice but to start letting them go the next day. Well, the next day these guys would go home, rummage around, get some good clothes on like myself, and come right back up here to the mountainside. No consequences. So they were right back up here doing what they love to do. Now, this started another issue, and those larger coal companies decided to try and work with these miners instead of prohibiting what they apparently love to do. So what they decided to do then was to charge these guys royalty fees. For every ton or so of coal that these guys would then pull up off the mountainside, they would charge them a nickel or a dime for that ton or so of coal. And this started a good cooperation between the miners and the larger coal companies, because these guys could then pull whatever they wanted up out of the ground, take it into town, sell it, and pay their fees, and still have more than enough money left over to feed their families. And this is actually one of the starts to the Independent Miners Association, which is still very much active to this very day here in northeastern Pennsylvania. And there are 6 of these deep mines today still active that all have roots back to the old bootlegging days in operation by the same families. Now these guys today, they wear that Independent Miners banner on their shirts, but they do like to wear that bootlegger term pretty proudly too. Now at this point, we're going to take just a short walk just to the other side of our caboose there. And I'm going to show you that strip mine in just a little bit better detail. And then I'll tell you a story about the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania.
Bye, Phoenixes.